heard it said before, I think, because it's pretty common that when it comes to organizing, one of the best guidelines that you can have is make sure there is a home for everything. The reason that works, and it is super duper true, but the reason that works is that when it's time to put something away, you don't have to think about it. The temptation just to drop it where you're at is removed because you know exactly where it belongs. But one of the things that I have learned from being in homes over the last 19 years, both on site and virtually, which is how I now do organizing, is that there are certain things that tend to never have a true home or a defined home. And so I've got a little cheat sheet here that I'm going to look at, and I'm going to just tell you some of the observations that I've made about these particular items over the years. If you've got something that I haven't addressed that you just don't know what to do with in your own home, drop it in the comments and I will be glad to respond to it. So, one of the things that I see just kind of being spread all over a home are pet supplies. And if you think about it, especially dogs, they may have grooming equipment and, of course, food and dishes and medicines and many, many, many things. What you want to do is find some place that accommodates the biggest part of the supplies, and that's typically food, and then make sure there's room for everything else all in that spot. The one exception, though, is when it comes to a leash and maybe doggy poop bags, I would have those near the door that you're going to go out. They're really, at that point you're thinking they're not necessarily pet supplies, but they are something that you're using as you leave the house, like you use a jacket. So that makes sense to have near the door. Clothing. People cheat on this a lot. Your clothing belongs in your room, in the places you've defined in your room, typically dressers and closets. A lot of folks, I say cheat, because they've got clothing in guest room closets, in kids' closets, all over the place. Don't do that. It means you've got too much. You're better off decluttering, purging what you have, and getting it all into one space, and that is your bedroom. Tools. Tools are just so often left all over the house. I've got a screwdriver in my junk drawer. I've got a hammer in the laundry room. I've got, you name it, all over the place. Depends how handy you are and how many tools you have, but have a toolbox that the tools go in and then a space for that toolbox. When you need that screwdriver in the kitchen, take the whole toolbox to the kitchen, use the screwdriver, put it back in, put the toolbox away. It may sound like more work when you're doing it that way, but it just avoids that tendency to leave the screwdriver where you last used it, and then, of course, you don't remember the next time you need it. Books. Books belong on bookshelves. You want to make sure, just like we've talked about with any kind of drawer, closet, shelf, that you're not filling your shelves more than 2/3 to at most 3/4 full. That's so you can move things around and find what you're looking for. Is it okay to have a book on your nightstand? Of course it is. But when you're done with it, it goes back to the bookshelf. It doesn't stay on the nightstand. It doesn't go on the floor next to the nightstand. It goes back to its home, and that's the bookshelf. And of course, you may have more than one bookshelf. Meds. This is probably the thing that I see just being the biggest mess in a home is medications. Of course, you've got those for your kids, you've got for yourself. Sometimes there's supplements, sometimes there's lots of them. I often see them all over the kitchen. So what I want to suggest is figure out what you're taking actively, get them in containers, child-proof please, that fit what you need for a few weeks. Put the bigger bottles away and do refills. What you're trying to do is not have 12, 14, 20 bottles of meds just falling all over the place, but have one place in the home where those meds are stored. Usually it's going to be the kitchen because that's where you're eating, that's where you're thinking about that sort of thing. If it's more first aid related, sure, probably a linen closet or a medicine chest. Crafts. It's so common to see crafts all over the place. Don't do that. Have a small plastic shelf that you keep things in, the kind with the drawers that you can roll around. Have a closet that you've devoted to crafts. It's okay. Closets can be for crafts if you're doing a lot of them, but keep everything together. And then lastly, I'll say toys. People, I think, make the mistake of letting kids have their toys all over the house. That is just a disaster when it comes time to cleaning up. So instead, decide, what are your kids' bedrooms going to be? Are they going to have some toys and some books in the bedroom? Is it going to be a place just for sleeping? Either answer is okay, but you define it and you keep it that way. If you are going to have toys in the kids' bedroom, I'm going to suggest that you don't have so many that they can't get them all picked up easily within 10 minutes. If you're going to have toys elsewhere in the house, that's fine, but that means they don't belong in mom and dad's bedroom. Toys don't belong in the kitchen. They belong where the toys go. Separating your house this way and keeping things in the places that they belong just makes cleanup so much easier. It involves a little bit of discipline at first. It involves figuring out where you're going to store things and some consistency in putting them back, but it just makes life so much easier. Like I said, if you've got something you've been struggling with, you don't know where to put it in your house, please, I don't think there's anything I haven't seen in the last 19 years, so drop it in the comments and I'm glad to answer it.